Alright, this step we're going to apply the glue. You can use an applicator. This type of applicator is good. Sometimes the tip of a skewer, that's why I keep them around for that, and smearing it around. And you're going to apply a thin bead around that. Okay, not perfect, but it's good for what we're going to do. If you want, you could take your skewer, smear it out a little bit. Try not to let it run down on the paper cone, and make sure all of the areas are covered. If you do get some on the paper cone or wherever you don't, remember, Q-tip, water. It's water soluble. Apply your foam. And press it down. I'm trying not to stretch. You don't want to stretch. And don't do one of these. You want it nice and centered. If you get a little spot of glue on the outside, again, don't worry. Just take a nice wet Q-tip, and that'll come right off. And whatever's left or bulging out, wouldn't worry about a whole lot. It does dry, for the most part, clear. You're not going to see it. But if you get a significant amount, then just gently blot it up. With your wet Q-tip. All right. I'm dabbing, I'm not stretching. Nice. I'm going to make sure it's nice and centered. That's good. Good. Nice. Okay. over the course of the next 5 minutes or so, just keep gently dabbing at that. Make sure your edges don't curl. The curling of the edges of the foam sometimes is it's dependent on what kind of foam, the actual manufacturer. I've seen different suppliers where whatever they're making the foam from may react more or less to the glue. Also, another factor is the amount of glue that you use. And that sometimes too much will make the edges curl. And you really want to avoid that. So just keep gently pressing that down until the glue sets, which is only going to be a few minutes. Okay, now that the glue has set for 5 or 10 minutes or so, we can go on to the next stage. We're going to make sure that the cone is centered. If I push directly in the center, it should move up and down freely. If you push around the edge, the voice coil is going to rub. Don't forget, take your shims out, or you're not going to be able to do it properly. So let's get rid of all of that. And press down and listen for a rub. And I'm moving it gently up and down. I don't hear the voice coil rubbing, so I know that the ring is in a really, really good position. That can change when you go to glue it. So you do not want to use crazy glue. Crazy glue is instant. You can use it later, but to do the initial set, you want to use Elmer's, some sort of white glue. Do not use the other, don't use, oh, where is it? Don't use that stuff. That tends to expand when it dries. That's not what you want to use. Elmer's works great. The Gorilla Wood glue works pretty good too. Any of that, milky kind of water-soluble stuff. When we apply the bead around the outside edge, we're going to apply it right in here, and a thin layer. Thin is good. Too much is bad. Too much drips all over the place. It makes the edges warp, and you'll just sit here forever pressing until your eyeballs turn inside out until it dries. A thin bead, and it will adhere quickly, and that's what you want. You want it to adhere quickly. And if you miss a couple of spots, don't worry. As you've seen me do on the inside edge, you can go back in there and fill it. Love these things, so we're going to start doing that. We're going to apply a thin bead all the way around. And that's it. Okay. Gently press. Again, you don't want to stretch. When you stretch or rotate, you're going to upset the center, and that could cause the voice coil to rub, which means you're going to have to peel it all off, and more than likely you're going to have to use a new foam. Once they glue down, they're generally in pretty poor condition when you peel them back up. I mean, I've tried pretty much very unsuccessfully, unless the glue is still very, very, very wet. And just dab, and as we did with the center, we're just going to keep dabbing around to make sure that it's set. And that's going to take a few minutes. It's not going to be an instant kind of thing, so make sure you're uninterrupted, the phone isn't ringing, you don't have to answer the phone, you're not going to check your text or your email, and just sit here for the next 5 minutes or so and gently dab around until the ring is adhered to where you can sit back and not watch an edge peel up. I forgot to mention, on a lot of speakers, you would have peeled off a cardboard insert that goes in this channel, and typically it has notches where the screws go through to hold the speaker in. This one wasn't that type of speaker. They're fantastic because you could apply a thin layer to the cardboard as well and stick it down and clamp it and just walk away from it. This type of speaker without the cardboard wedges, you're going to spend a little bit more time. As you dab around, every once in a while, make sure there's no glue on your fingertips. Just check that centering again, make sure it's not rubbing. Every once in a while. Go around a few times. I'm rotating, dabbing, rotating. Whatever your method is, keeping it stationary and dabbing, whatever your method is, whatever works best for you, just every once in a while, make sure that voice coil isn't rubbing. Now, as you can see, the glue is mostly set. If you still have a couple of areas that maybe you haven't applied enough glue, or it hasn't adhered properly, and it's just a little itty-bitty part right there. If it was the type with the cardboard inserts, it wouldn't be much of a big deal. This particular one, if I have any areas like that, I could do one of two things. I could apply another little dab of glue and work at it for another 10 minutes or so, or I can simply take a tiny bit of crazy glue and apply it underneath the rippled area. What I do with that is I'll take like a medicine bottle cap or some piece of plastic and put a drop of crazy glue on that, and then use a dental pick to put it under. That way I know I'm not going to splash any or have an overabundance of crazy glue, which is not what we want. So if you're doing it for aesthetic reasons, yeah, that's fine. If it's a larger portion that's not adhered, you don't want that. You want it pretty much almost all the way around. Alright, the speaker has been refoamed. The glue is set all the way around. It's set, but it's not fully cured. It's set enough that after an hour you can work with it and remount it, sweep test it. A lot of times I will sweep test it before I remount it in the speaker using a signal generator or a sweep generator, and go up through the frequencies, especially the low frequencies where you're making it rise and collapse, and you want to listen for rubs around the coil. And that may, if you have a rub on the voice coil, you may need to tweak and pull a little bit, which you definitely want to do before it's fully cured. But if you've worked at it the way that I described, you should be fine. And if you listen, and I don't know if you can hear this, and that's my point, you don't hear anything, there's no rubs on the voice coil. We're pretty good. We are pretty good. Going to remount it in the speaker, and then we're good to go. Well, the speaker's installed, and at this point I'm going to sweep test it with a signal generator. And so far, so good. And I swept it up through the low frequencies to the high frequencies, made sure the woofer and the tweeter were both working. If you have a mid-range, then obviously you want to check that too. In the very low tones, I'm listening for rubbing as the voice coil comes in and out, and it's rub-free, so we're good with that. If you don't have a signal generator, you can download. There are a bunch of WAV files with frequencies on them in steps and sweep, and you could do it that way too. And you'll notice as the glue is drying, it's getting more and more transparent. When it's totally dry, you'd never even know there was any glue there at all. That seems to work for me pretty well. So the Bang & Olufsen is reconed. Actually, it's refoamed, not reconed. It's refoamed, and it's all good to go. I'm going to let it dry 24 hours. Customer will be able to pick it up. And just for the sake of argument, I bet the boys at home can't leave you alone.
Honey, honey, you're so money, money, money. You got a country road, Carolina soul. Baby,
Yeah, works for me.